So with the year that was COVID-19 in 2020, many businesses, as Julia alluded to, refocused their values as consumer perspectives changed. This has seen a focus on homegrown innovation and materials that are as good for human health as they are for the environment. Big Save Furniture, a proud New Zealand family-owned and operated business, has committed to using more renewable sources in their furniture. Thanks to the many benefits of wool, including its biodegradability and other attributes such as being naturally fire retardant and allergy friendly, it has been a natural fit for Big Save. Their wool sofa range is already proving a hit with consumers, and they've got more exciting product developments in the pipeline. Here to tell us firsthand, directors Tom McKim and Craig Salter are here to tell us how they plan to work together with farmers to develop products that will not only benefit customers, but also us Kiwi farmers. Thanks, Tom and Craig.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
I'm Tom, and this is Craig.
How are we?
So, look, I thought we'd give you a little bit of background. We're in a little bit of a messy room here, but this is one of our product development rooms, so we can hopefully show you some of the stuff we're working on. It's very exciting. But I'll give you a little bit of background about Big Save. My father started it in 1973 in a place called Papram, just north of Wellington. And from there, we've grown to be the largest furniture retailer in New Zealand across furniture and bedding. We've got 24 stores from Whangarei to Invercargill. We're massively vertically integrated, so we own as much of the supply chain and parts of the business that we can. So we own all the properties, we own all the product development, we own all the trucking, so all the parts that we can control to get a really good outcome for our customers. And we're really, really excited about where we're getting to now with bringing back a lot more control in that supply chain, and a huge part of it is wool. So Craig will tell you a bit about how we've what we're developing, the different products, but how we've got to where we are was it's sort of stars aligning in good ways and bad ways. And obviously we've all been hugely affected by COVID. And just prior to COVID, we were looking at our business model and looking at our supply chain, and we're actually developing a product which was using recycled plastic bottles from the ocean. And they strip it down, they strip the material down, and then make it into a fabric. And this is a piece of fabric here. It's called Sequel yarn. Adidas and Nike use it in a lot of shoes. And most of those bottles are out of the ocean through the Mediterranean. And now we've got another range of fabric we're getting out of bottles through the ocean in the Pacific. Very, very cool material. But what we were doing there was just looking at the impact Big Save was having on the New Zealand environment with the amount of plastic that we were producing across our lounge suites and our beds. Things like a mattress like that there is covered in plastic. So we wanted to help in any way and just see what would happen. Well, we developed this bed, and within 6 weeks of it hitting the floors before COVID hit, it became our biggest selling bed. And then very shortly after that, it became the biggest selling bed in New Zealand, quantity-wise. And we could go through 8,000 to 10,000 of those beds in a month. So it's very, very big volumes. The success of that and part of what we were doing with that was we were trying to see what customers were interested. Our naivety was thinking that this is a young customer that's 25 years old, that cares about the environment, and maybe older customers don't worry as much. Well, it turned out through moving a lot of these beds that it was every person cared. As long as you created a great product and the price point was at a go price, everyone cared. So in developing that, we started to look at lots of other pieces that we could put in and say, well, what are the fibres? What are the coverings? There was then another thing happening where the New Zealand government was coming at us, and they were coming at the whole furniture industry, saying that we need product to be flame retardant. We need sofas and beds to have flame properties. And really the only way in the past you've been able to do that is using chemically based foams, which are carcinogenic, proven to cause a lot of cancers. So we were very much against that. And I'd worked in a business in the UK doing that in furniture, and we didn't want it at all. So we were looking at that thinking, how do we get that across the line? And then we're lucky enough to have our business based in Hawke's Bay, and we're friends with a lot of farmers, and we've had businesses that are linked to farms, and we're out one day with a mate of ours, and he's digging holes, burying a lot of his crutching wool at his farm. And we were talking to him about his pricing, and he was talking to this was the second year where he was paying out a check to lose money as he was sharing. So it was like all the stars were coming together, where we were looking at all these different things and saying, well, hold on, we've got wool. It's such a great product. what can be done with it. And very quickly with some great people in our business and product development, we were able to say, look, let's start taking out polyester and let's start inserting back wool. And Craig could probably lead from that and tell you a bit about what we do with our products and what we're doing in the future.
Yeah, it was actually like Tom said, when we started sort of on the wool journey, we didn't sort of know where it was going to take us, and it's really actually started very, very quickly in the journey. And one of the things that we thought as a large business that wool was going to be quite niche related and probably didn't have any parallels with our business. But as we started to get into the supply chain, and the previous lady kind of mentioned supply chain, we worked out that there was so many people in the actual supply chain from the farmer to the end product, which actually created this false economies of price, which when we looked at, actually it looked unattainable for us to actually use in our product. But when we started having different meetings with different people across the industry, we actually worked out by deconstructing the supply chain, we added them all up at one point, and I think it was about 14 or 15 different people in the supply chain. And when with our current supply chain, we've got 4. So we've been able to remove all those people out of the supply chain, which has actually been able to get us closer to the farm and the farmer and work out what the actual problem was, and actually take the product and start putting it into our furniture. Hopefully, visually, you'll be able to see some of this stuff, but as Tom sort of mentioned, the first thing we actually did is just started with a 360 gram layer, which we wrap over the foam of all of our lounge suites. So gone is normally you have a foam layer, some polyester, and then some fabric. Well, now what we've done is we've replaced the polyester with this nice wool layer, and we've also replaced the fabric in quite a few cases now with a wool fabric as well. And as mentioned before, the consumer's really, really loving it. One of the other projects of having many conversations with lots of people is we've come with the same layer, but there's actually, I'm not sure if people may have seen this, but there's a slit through this, and it's actually used instead of spraying for round trees. So one of the local guys here, a guy Andy Lowe, he's just put in 30,000 native trees, and he's just running a concept on trial on this. So basically it goes around the tree, clips on, and then it's staked down, so there's no need to spray. So obviously with using it with a pine tree, that's that one spray, but with the native, with the 2 sprays, you don't have to worry about going back the second time.
Part of what we've done with this breaking of the supply chain was by being able to go as close as we could get by getting close to the farmer, we can give them a good price. We're very open and transparent as a business model to make sure that in anything we're doing with supply chain, the people that are adding the most amount of value need to get the most amount of money to stay alive. And something we're doing with this wool thing is saying that we believe that currently the $4.50 a kg for wool should be the bare minimum that is the pricing of wool, and it will, we believe, go up from there. So if there's one thing you take away from tonight, please don't get rid of your sheep. We are definitely going to need them. And that's just not with what we're doing. That's certainly what's going to happen across all industries. Plastic is on its way out. Natural fibre is on its way back in. And part of that is some of the stuff that we were doing in the 1950s and 1960s was awesome stuff. We need to go back to that, and we need to bring in the new technology of what will be 2050 with using robotics and some automation so that we can get these natural fibres into the market. There isn't actually a price barrier here. People keep talking about price and that wool's expensive. There isn't. If we're able to cut that waste out of the supply chain, those middle people that were clipping the ticket, get direct to farmers, and then what will end up happening with that wool is get a little bit of smarts around it, start going back to the grading we were doing, start looking at those micron levels, start looking at the breaks in the fibre, and start using big quantities of it. Our goal across furniture is to get it into all of our lounge suites, get it into all of our beds, and then ship it offshore to our friends, big manufacturers, robotic plants up in Vietnam, China, America, and start putting it over there because they're facing the same problems we are. Their governments are saying, your lounge suites need to be flame retardant. Well, really the only way to create a flame retardant sofa without putting chemicals in your foam is wrapping it with wool. And there'll be a lot of product development we're looking at where we're combining products. We're looking at hemp and flax and fibres going into wool to give it even more strength in different areas. Do you want to tell them a bit about NOPS?
Yeah, well, yeah. One of the other things we found is sort of Tom mentioned it's this 90s, 50s, and 1960s knowledge, and every time we go and meet someone that's got a lot of this knowledge, they actually seem to be in their 60s and 70s. One of the products that we've bought ourselves actually our own carding machine, our own needling machine. So we've started actually in the next 2 weeks creating our own layers. But one of the byproducts that we learned about from a guy is in the carding machine, someone put one together backwards about 20 or 30 years ago. And what it actually did is instead of creating one of these nice sort of flat, fluffy layers, it did the reverse and actually created a whole lot of balls. It's called a knop, a K-N-O-P. At some stage when you've got time, have a look online and you'll see it. And we've actually started to develop another separate range using that. So we've got duvets coming through. We've actually got a wool pillow that's about to hit the market. The one thing that we've actually tried to do with everything we're doing is maximize the amount of wool that we use. The lounge suite we've got out there, I think the number they got to is 22 kilos of wool. We've got a new bed that's about to hit the market, arrives on the 20th of August. And when we were developing the bed, the first few layers the guys put in, we said, like, how much wool's in the bed? And he says, oh, look, I think we got to maybe 2.5 kilos. We're like, no, we need to get more. And we got to 3, and then we got to 3.5, and then we got to 4. And then I was talking to this farmer friend of ours. I said, look, what's the average amount of wool that comes off a sheep? And he says, oh, look, mate, I reckon it's about 6.5 kilos. So part of the self story with that bed is we've managed to stuff one whole sheep into the bed. So we've got 6.5 kilos of wool in the bed. The one thing that we found by removing the foams and the polyesters is we're actually not affecting price points. So we're actually putting a better product into our product and remaining price point. And it's allowed, I think, for us to actually see our customer actually cares. I use the example of when we were with COVID and there was everyone, I live in town, I live on a hill, and every Thursday I go for a walk and everyone's recycling was out. So you'll obviously notice that everyone was slowly becoming more and more of an alcoholic over time. But every Thursday, everyone was recycling. And I'd have to say, since we've come out of lockdown, I would say 80% of people have stayed recycling, whereas previously I would have thought we maybe be at 20 and 30. So we're seeing these behavioural changes. And when we started down this journey, we were after the 30 and under customer. But what we're finding with this product is it's actually across all age groups. And especially the one thing that we're really loving about the wool thing is you actually don't have to do anything to it to put it into furniture. It's amazing property. All the strength properties, the fire retardancy, the heat holding it, the dispersal of moisture. It's all great things for furniture.
Yeah, I think the other thing, just going back to what Julia was saying, and there are things that will be coming and over time, but one of the ones Julia mentioned there was transparency. There's no question about it that is really important. You know, customers, they want to know that what we're saying as a retailer and what our salespeople are telling our customers is actually true. And I was talking to a friend of ours who's a farmer, and I was talking about air tag tracing on sheep. And he was semi-reluctant. And I said to him, well, look, I can understand you're reluctant. You know, I think we've got our own sheep with our own farms now, and looking at the cost of it, I think we're about $1.20 an air tag. But as I said to him, look, if I can guarantee you $8 a kg for your strong wool, will you put on air tags? And he said, yeah, look, no trouble, as many as you need. Now, that's the future. It's going to be working together to create these results that get a better outcome. You know, if air tags for sheep gives the customer the ability to trace their product, there's a very cool company out there called Sheep Inc., and you're able to trace your jersey and trace your sheep that you can buy online. But if that's going to add value and customers may pay more, but the farmer ends up getting more, then it's a very simple thing to do. So I think there'll be the evolution of this stuff is going to be working together and working closely. We're super excited. I mean, for once now we've got really good control of a great raw material. We can build it brilliant for the New Zealand public, but then we can also do very well out of it, shipping it offshore. I think, you know, the one thing that COVID's done in our world, it's given New Zealand a massive advantage now. It's broken the supply chain, and the new world is a hybrid. You know, businesses like ours and lots of other businesses got very lazy on relying on low wage rate countries, whether it was Vietnam, Thailand, China. What's going to happen now is countries will stand on their own 2 feet for where's best to manufacture. Well, there's no question about layering manufacturing and wool in New Zealand and then use that in the country, but also then use it offshore, ship it offshore as a finished product. So the value of New Zealand strong wool is definitely going to increase, and it is a fabulous product. I mean, we know it for what we need it for, but then there's just so many other businesses that we've met in the last year that are doing great things with it, across new flooring that's attacking across those plastic floors or carpets, and there's some really good stuff happening. So I would just, the biggest thing I'd love everyone to take away is, and we would like everyone to do, is keep your sheep and stay very, very positive about the future of New Zealand strong wool.
Cool.
Thanks very much, guys. Some really positive messages for wool producers, which is, a pleasant change for a lot of these guys. We've got a few questions that have come through. How important will the ethical story of growing wool be to your business? Is it more the biodegradable feature of wool as a natural fibre, or the story of how wool is ethically grown, and then the personal story of how people involved in growing, harvesting and preparing the wool?
Yeah, I suppose I can take the first part and Craig can do a second part. So I think the transparency part is really, really important, that people know where the product's coming from. But we're getting a huge amount of feedback now where people are looking at the cycle of a product. What am I left with? And we all look at it when we're doing our recycling. If I'm going to buy something, now if you're going to buy a bed or you're going to buy a lounge suite, you buy it in New Zealand, 99% of the time at the end of its life, that bed's life or that sofa's life, it's going to end up in a landfill. So what we're looking at is saying, how do we either create a recycling process for the product we sell, so it's a full circle, or how do we ensure that if it does end up in a landfill, it's good for the environment, it can biodegrade and it's not there for 1,000 years. So there's a huge amount of importance in that in relation to what we can insert into our products, and wool is brilliant from that point of view. In relation to the ethics around how wool comes off, yes, there is a lot in that, and there is a lot of people who care about that. And what we're looking at is partnering with supply chain where we can get transparency and we can get the right practices happening, and it's economically viable. So there is a lot happening in that space, and there is still a lot of stuff to be learned, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely.
What in your mind is the biggest risk to use wool in your business? What as growers should we make sure we avoid?
Look, I think probably we need to get back to treating it like it used to be treated, as a great income source before it actually becomes a great income source. I think, we need to get back to the classing. We need to concentrate back on micron levels. Like one of the things that we're seeing with the different products that we can create, we can create a product out of the dag wool, so we can take that out of the market. We're working with another business who can take the slight wool, so we can actually start taking the different classes out of the market and using it for different purposes. So I think for strong wool to get the premium pricing that it will in the future, is we need to treat it like it was in the past. I think what's ended up happening over the last few years, only anecdotally from what we see, is that because there's been no value to the product, then it's basically get it off as fast as we can and get it gone.
Yeah, cool. So how soon can any old Joe Boggs commercial farmer sign up with Big Save to supply some wool?
That's a great question, and I can tell you we've had a lot of people asking. So look, at the moment we've got a bit of a closed supply chain, because I use this terminology in another wool meeting we were having today. We have got a tiger by the tail in relation to, we've got lots of product that we want to get out there, and it does use a lot of wool. Our biggest hold up at the moment is manufacturing it here. Our machinery that we're needle punching on should have been operating 6 weeks ago, and power components are delayed because of COVID. So unfortunately, our product development teams and our manufacturing team on this side is constrained a wee bit by speed to manufacture. We do know that over the next 12 months, that volume of being able to manufacture is going to lift up massively. And that's where we will see the entire, that wool pricing slowly starting to move. We have seen it move just closely. It's one of our goals in this, is this actually looking at the strong wool price. We keep our business very, very simple. And one of our gauges is saying what's happening to that price. So at the moment, we are a closed supply chain. However, we are going to be talking more and more and more to different farming groups, and then just opening it up. And if that strong wool price is going up, ourselves and about 6 to 10 other businesses with flooring in different areas are doing the right thing. And so stay in there and keep getting wool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks very much, guys. Just a couple of comments to pass on. Kate Broadbent says yeehaw, and Julia Jones says incredible messaging. This has been amazing. So thanks very much, team. It's been really great to have you on.
Guys, I really
Thanks for your
appreciate you having
time.
us. Thank you. Thanks, Sarah.
Cheers.